listeners, I'm Staci-lee Sherwood from Reality Checks with Staci-lee, coming to you on All About Animals Radio. Now, if you think animal issues are just about animals, well, no, they also involve politics and economics, so they do affect all of us. So I hope you learn a little something from today's show and maybe be motivated to act and enjoy the show. So with me today, we have two wonderful concerned citizens that I've known for a long time from down in Miami, Florida, Sara Velasquez and Jennifer Hayley Rotker. So welcome. So let's start with you guys on how you guys got involved in wanting to save sea turtles.
Just a general walk on the beach at sunset, and I saw these little creatures pop out of the nest, and everyone wanted to touch them. I'm like, no, please don't touch them. It's not a time for a selfie or a photo op. So, and someone had left all their furniture at the beach, and they were running the wrong way, and we were running after them. And I went, though, this is probably a normal occurrence. Why doesn't anyone know about this?
Right.
What can I do to help? And I just got involved started posting on Facebook and got involved with other neighbors and fell down a rabbit hole.
What was the reaction from like people around who might have seen this going on? Did they know what was happening, or did they ask you like, "Hey, what are you doing?"
People asked us what we were doing. People didn't really understand what was going on. I had noticed that the sign was so little on the nest that you almost had to disturb the nest to get close to it to read it. So that was kind of counterproductive. And I had reached out to people I knew at Surfrider who put me in touch with somebody else. And it just kind of went from there to get involved with other people who were active in our community, either hosting beach cleanups or advocating for animals. Everyone kind of knew each other. It was just about getting people involved.
Now, did you know anything about sea turtles before you came upon this?
Nothing.
No. Yeah,
I lived in the sea.
Actually, I'm gonna pitch in here. My case is a little bit different than Jennifer's, probably, because I used to fly to Mexico to Tulum just to see the turtles.
Oh wow!
And I've been living in the beach for many, many years, and in my own backyard, I realized after I don't have a really pretty story like Jennifer's. I have a very sad story. In South Beach, I was walking with a friend of mine years ago, and we were walking her little dogs, and all of a sudden I see all these little markings. I didn't know what it was, and I started following the markings to the opposite side, to the park, right to where the that Ocean Drive Park is. So I started walking through, and I realized that I see these little black dead little babies everywhere. I started looking, and the more I walked, the more I saw more of them. And then I realized that they were going to the park towards the grass. And there was lots of them everywhere, just dead. So I started taking pictures. I actually took pictures. I take pictures of everything. So I took pictures of the markings of the nest that I realized was there, and they were coming from there. And I sent it out to the city, and then Miami New Times actually took those pictures and put them on the news. And that's how I sort of realized what was going on. I started digging a little bit deeper, and I reached out to the city and I said, what is going on? I mean, it was like, I don't remember, it was at least 100 or 100 plus baby turtles that were dead. I actually had the bad luck of going just before the actual Sea Turtle Conservation Project people go in the mornings. Right. It was super early, so I just arrived before they had actually cleaned up, and that's what I realized. And then I just started digging in a little bit more and more, and I was really surprised to know that there was sea turtles on the beach where I lived for so many years, and that I had I didn't know to need to go out of the country to actually see a mama turtle laying nests or babies being born. Right. And that's how I got initially involved. And as Jennifer said, then I started reaching out to other people and just, word of mouth. And we started meeting together. And then, we met you after that. You were so kind enough to allow me to, share all your knowledge with me. And I went up to see what was going on and how the nest should be handled and so forth. So that's how it all began to me. It was a little bit different.
So you said about 100 hatchlings. So that's almost like, yeah, that's probably like a whole nest.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And this
probably
is
like a
Loomis
whole
Park?
nest.
That was right in, Loomis Park in Ocean Drive. No, not Loomis Park. It's right where, that's actually a little bit south from there. It was, I don't remember the name of the park right now. There's a playground for kids there. It's not at one of the large parks. It's one of the smaller ones right before 5th and Ocean. There's a small little park there, a green area by a playground. And that's exactly where the babies were all over the place. Like, I found babies even all the way to Collins. That's how far those poor babies went. And of course they couldn't make it, obviously no energy. So they ended up, dying. But I still, I will never forget those images. Never.
How far? Okay. So from where the nest was to the furthest distance that you found them, about how far would that be? Like a block, like a half mile? Do you recall how
I would
far?
say a good almost 2 blocks and a half. Because in that area, the ocean, the sand is very wide because they do all that sand refurbishment stuff. So they have that area in the beach is pretty wide. So you have to walk a lot to just get to the edge of the park. And then from the park, that's like the park itself, it's at least half a block, right? It's the frontage of the entire park, of the entire building area. So by the time you reach Collins, that's a good almost, at least a block and a half of distance.
Were they going to a fixed light pole or a temporary pop-up light?
They were going to fixed light poles from the actual park. That's where they were heading to. Yes. Yeah. Right. And it had been a while because, their bodies were pretty dry already. Oh. So I don't know what time they had actually hatched, but I do remember that the babies were dry. They were not, freshly.
It could have been it could have been the night before.
Probably
the day before sunset.
Even because it had been many hours, and the markings were intact. I probably still have pictures of that because I took so many, and that's when I started walking. I actually started walking every day around the area just to make sure that nothing like that was happening again, and so forth. Wow. We all started that little group of concerned citizens. Back in the day, and I don't remember, but this was years ago.
Wow. And to put in perspective, sea turtle hatchlings are only about maybe 3 or 4 inches long, so they're really tiny. So if they had to crawl a couple of blocks, gosh, that'd be like if a human, walked several miles.
That's a marathon.
Yeah, that really is it's a marathon. Yeah, that's a long time. And a lot of times what they do is they literally just crawl towards a light source until they just run out of steam, because they have this like burst of energy, and that energy is to crawl out of the nest and race towards the ocean. And of course, once they're in the ocean, as you had mentioned when you were swimming, Sarah, once they're in the ocean, it's just so much easier for them and they don't have to use all that energy. So when they're crawling on that soft sand, that lumpy beach that I hate to walk on myself, that's really exhausting. And sometimes they're picked off by predators, though we don't have a whole lot of wildlife on the beach anymore. But they just literally crawl until they just run out of steam.
Those birds know when to go.
Oh, they do. Like the what is it? The night heron. The night herons. We used to have a couple in Lauderdale by the sea. One would like hang out around the dunes. I guess they were waiting for the greenies, and one would hang out like right by at the wash zone. And they absolutely knew, that it was going to be kind of easy pickings for them, which is unfortunate. So since you guys first started to see those sea turtle nests, and we all know that the light pollution is a huge problem. It's a global problem, but it's definitely a problem in the East Coast of Florida, especially the Southeast Coast. Would you say that the lighting problem in Dade County is as bad as it was from all those years ago, or worse?
Worse.
I
Worse.
think it's worse because there's
Gosh.
more development, actually.
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
Yeah. Less protection, more development.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
unfortunately. It's very sad because, you would figure that if they're doing
There's just so many
development,
more people too.
there would be so much awareness, but it's not exactly. You have so many people moving here.
Yeah.
We also have people doing businesses where you can do like a nighttime picnic on the beach, and there's not much regulation to them. Like a pop-up picnic where people are going to set up tables and chairs and lights and
Events.
And this, okay,
it's
and
a lot
this,
of events.
this is during turtle season?
People have private businesses where they do these picnics on the beach, but then you have the
Wow.
big huge events where they're bringing in floodlights and stuff, and you can get
Oh my
get the
God.
disorientation reports and see the hatchlings that end up in the holes of the light fixtures.
Yeah, all of that, of course, is a violation of the, let's see, the federal law, the state law, the county law, and the lo-
Oh my
and the
gosh.
local light ordinances. I mean, there's just like a long list of laws that all of that violates. And of course, this is an endangered species, so you would think, I don't know, the agency paid and charged to enforce this law, which would be Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, would be doing something about that, but they don't. And then it falls to code enforcement, but they're not really given training. And I guess you could say they're not really given much an incentive, right? Would you agree that code enforcement isn't given much of an incentive or support in enforcing the law?
I think as soon as we make some ground that there's a different administration and with different needs, and they're told to address certain things and not others.
Right.
And they actually, the city, at least in Miami Beach, they have very little people that are actually doing code enforcement in general for anything. Not only, it's just that.
Yeah, they're in charge of the whole city.
Exactly. And then you have just, you have so many issues going on here that everything gets to the bottom, for later, and it never gets done.
Well, I remember a few years ago, let's see, when would this have been? Probably 3 or 4 years ago. I was down in Crandon Park, right? So that would be like the Biscayne Bay area. And this would have been, I think it was like in July. And I went down, not looking for sea turtles per se, but I was down kind of looking for shorebirds. And I get into the parking lot, and Crandon Park, I guess, used to be some sort of a zoo or some sort of an entertainment thing, which has since closed down. And I get into the parking lot, and I was overwhelmed with the smell. And it was like it was like a toilet had backed up, right? Or someone had really gotten sick. And what had happened was one of the pipes, because Florida still takes all the poop, and they dump it in the ocean. And one of those pipes had burst, and it had all come back, no surprise with the tides. And it kind of like had covered the beach, right? Just covered the beach. And I remember seeing some of these little shorebirds, and they were literally trying to walk around this, huge pile of seaweed that was also covered with the poop and plastic and God knows what else. And I remember just thinking, what are we doing to this once pristine area? I don't think sea turtles actually nest. I don't think they nest on Biscayne Bay.
No.
They might, but I don't recall hearing any nest down there. But I remember seeing the little shorebirds try to navigate that, and I just thought, oh my gosh, this is just so tragic. And sea turtle, the mamas are pretty skittish. And I remember when I was doing the morning program, I would come out and I would see like these false crawls. And sometimes they would come out onto the beach, and they would only crawl maybe a few feet, and they would come up to like a really small edge, not like a big cliff, but like an edge that was like maybe a foot, a foot high. And of course, it's soft sand, and these turtles are 200, 300, 400 pounds. So you would think that they would just bulldoze through it and carry on. But instead, it stopped them, right? And they would turn around and they go back into the ocean, and then they wouldn't make a nest and they wouldn't lay the eggs. And so you know how that plays out. So when I was down at Crandon Park, and I saw, and this was like for several blocks, and this, oh my God, the smell was like overwhelming. And I thought, so we don't just have like Mother Nature. It's literally all of this going on that would inhibit, any kind of sea turtle nesting, which is really a crisis.
We
So
do have a lot of sewage main breaks.
yeah,
I hear
yeah.
about them through Surfrider and through Miami Water Keepers and then through
Mhm.
the county.
So what
There's a
is
lot.
going, yeah, what is, yeah, I heard, there was a couple of months there when it almost seemed like Fort Lauderdale had one, gosh, I swear, like every week
Fort
or so,
Lauderdale has a huge issue. Fort Lauderdale
huge
has a
issue.
backflow of sewage. It
Yeah,
runs down the street there
it
pretty
does.
regularly, even
It,
with a couple inches of rain, forget about a storm.
yeah, it does. And you would think, people get up in arms for a couple of days and then they kind of forget about it. And then, all the officials are like, oh, well, we'll put it off until tomorrow or next week, or, someone else takes my job, and it can be their headache, but it doesn't get done. So what happens in Miami? Because I've literally lost track. I remember
Same
there was
thing.
that one, but I've lost track. Does anything ever get done? Does it ever get fixed?
No, actually, no. It's just overdevelopment. Again, we go back to the same story. We have tons of construction going on. We have new buildings, over huge towers that are coming up.
Yeah, but I
But
don't
we
think
don't have
anything's being done to update the infrastructure,
nothing.
plumbing or
Exactly.
electrical.
And this is infrastructure that has been there for what, 40, 60, 70 years? I don't even know how
I think
long.
so. Yeah, long
We
time.
already had a problem, always have a problem. And but they don't address, from the root of the cause, which is,
I know
you
that
hear that we have
the water costs have gone up steadily, but I don't know anything that's being done to mitigate the sewage issues.
no.
Other than
That's
them telling people not to flush paper towels and cleaning wipes down the toilet.
Yeah, and I carry the app where it tells you what beaches can you go, and it's kind of safe to go to, and the ones that are not. And usually most of them are not. If you look at it, there's a lot of days that you can't, you shouldn't be going into the water, into the ocean, which is it's really sad. And forget about going into the bay, the sites. When I lived by the yeah.
Sarah, you said there's an app that tells you which beaches are safe. And is this just like a water quality issue, or is this like trash or poop on the beach, or
Water
what
quality,
determines if
but it's
it's safe?
basically poop. Yeah, water
Oh
quality,
my
but it's
God.
basically poop. It is
And
poop.
You
Yeah.
should just know that you can't, after there's a heavy rain, you can't go to the beach because you just can't go.
Oh my God. I mean, what does that tell you? And then you think of like all the endangered species, not just sea turtles, but all the, shorebirds and
Everything.
the crabs, everything. And of course, humans are lying on the sand and walking through it, and the children are digging into it, and God knows what else are eating the sand. And so of
Yeah,
course,
they're definitely rolling around in
yeah,
it,
they're
pushing
rolling
it in
around.
their
Yeah,
bathing
exactly.
suits.
Oh Lord, they're rolling around in it.
Exactly.
Oh, they
And you
love
end
Oh,
to
up with
roll
skin
around in it.
rashes and skin problems because of the contamination.
oh my
I mean, I
gosh.
don't go into the water. I barely ever go into the water in Miami Beach. And I've lived here since 2005 practically. And this is
Wow.
almost 20 years. And I just don't go in the water, period. That's just a thing that I just don't do because I've seen so much happen. I don't feel
Oh,
comfortable.
I'll
And then
swim
I
in the
have my
ocean
daughter.
versus swimming in the pool with the kids' poop.
Well, pools,
Yeah.
yeah, pools can be really bad too.
Yeah.
I don't think they get maintained or cleaned out either. At least with the ocean, it's such a vast amount of water. There's always that chance that the tide will, kind of take it out at least temporarily. And of course, this isn't even about like the red tide problem and the blue-green algae, which is, yeah, that's a whole other ball of wax, which you can't go into the water either when,
Mhm.
when that happens.
Oh, look
And
at
that,
the
of
other
course,
side of Florida. You can't even breathe there.
exactly, exactly. Well, actually, if you're on the beach and it's like an extra bad breakout kind of thing, um, yeah, they basically just kind of tell the tourists because they figure the tourists don't really know. Oh, it's okay. They call it naturally occurring. That's one of their buzzwords. It's naturally occurring, and not to worry. And then they would come out like early in the morning, and they would remove all of the dead marine life, which it wouldn't just be the fish, right? It would be crabs. Sometimes it'd be baby sea turtles. Sometimes it would be dolphins or baby sharks, and all of this marine life would be killed from the red tide and the blue green algae and everything else that gets dumped in there. And they would just, I don't know if they would even bury it. I think sometimes they would just kind of like put it back in the ocean and hope like the tide would take it out. And so that's a whole other thing that people are completely oblivious of, that when they're on the beach. And then of course that really makes, any of the sea turtles that have a nest there, it takes a couple of months for the hatchlings, for the eggs to become hatchlings. And so during all that time, you can imagine all the chemicals that are kind of seeping into the eggs.
Leaching in.
Yeah, right. And then, of course, the hatchlings come out, and, unlike even just 100 years ago, it's not really pristine. So they're walking on all of that. And of course, that would have to affect them too, not to mention all the trash. So I would go to these beaches and I would look at these like piles of seaweed, and I would look at the piles of poop and all the plastic. And I would just think, this could be such a beautiful, pristine paradise. But if only code enforcement and FWC would enforce the laws, that would really be great. So when you talk about development in Miami, I'm always amazed when people talk about development, because when I drive around, I can barely see any open space left, right? When people say, "Oh, they're developing this," my first question is, where? Where could they be developing this? Because there's hardly any open space left. So I guess, would you say what they're tearing down, like the older, smaller buildings, and building like
They're building
skyscrapers?
giant buildings. They're
Giant
also
buildings, yeah.
selling off a lot of public land, and land that was like in Hollywood. There's a huge fight going on about Azalea Terrace. They want to take an area that's not developed, and they want to put a private condo on something, and public tax dollars were used to purchase that land for conservation purposes and for the public enjoyment, and now they want to monetize it. Yeah. It's horrible. And you're a barrier island, and you want to put in subterranean parking, and the land just can't hold it.
Where is Azalea Terrace?
Azalea Terrace is in Hollywood.
No, but I mean, is it like South Hollywood? Like, is it on the border of Miami, or is it like the northern part?
I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with Hollywood. I was there years ago.
I'm thinking it has to be up at the northern part. There's a northern corner that is beautiful, that is right where there's actually there's a public park there that has a small sea turtle program there going on usually. And I think it's right by Hollywood, at the northern part of it. I was driving there probably a few days ago. And I think it's where I usually get lost and I have to do a U-turn, which is kind of like a corner at the end of Hollywood. And there are some tall condos like in the middle of nowhere in that area. So I'm supposing that's kind of like the place, because it's pristine. It's really beautiful. No wonder, no wonder. It's always greed. I think the whole issue comes back to greed.
Yeah, they want to chop down a part of the dune and put a path through, and then put the condo in.
Oh, no. Well, that's just like what I was telling you guys earlier about the Mayan Club. The Mayan Club had just a couple of condos and a very small dune, and they actually got permission from the Florida Department of Environmental, pardon the expression, protection, to come in at like 2 a.m. and knock it down, just so they would have a view, even though sea turtles had always nested there. And in fact, the previous year there had been a nest, and on and on and on. And so this was just literally just a couple of condos so they could have a view. So you said this is an ongoing battle, but I'm guessing that the human side is going to win, right? It sounds like they've already maybe predetermined that.
It kind of seems like they're taking steps to clear certain areas, like it's already been passed.
It's already been passed. Oh, wow.
It's already been passed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's kind of like another sneaky thing that a lot of developers do, is they try to like break ground. And so on the thought that just in case if a decision doesn't go their way, they can say, oh, well, we already broke ground. So whatever it was we weren't supposed to just destroy, we kind of already destroyed it. So there's no reason to stop. You know what I'm saying? There's no reason to stop us now, kind of thing. So maybe that's what they're planning. So that's not good at all. That's really not good news at all. It's the sea turtles are going to have like no place to nest. They don't just migrate north. I was talking to a few people at the IUCN, and supposedly these are like the best of the best, the brightest sea turtle biologists in the world. And they didn't have any kind of sense of urgency, even though in Florida, I would say it's got to be like 80 to 90% of the hatchlings just don't make it to the ocean. There's just way too much development. There's way too much light pollution in the hot sand. I don't see how it could really be. I don't see how it could be anything else. But their sense of urgency was kind of like, well, it's not really urgent, and
So
take a
there's
wait.
zero plan for hatcheries?
Zero plan, yes, zero plan for hatcheries. And I have that in writing because I put it in writing and I said, well, I see these studies going back, 5, 10, 20 years from you guys, some of which are from your members, right? And also some of these members work at universities here and they work at nonprofits. And so clearly you have known that the sand was too hot and only produced females, and you've known about light pollution. I mean, all you have to do is go out on the beach and just look, right? And you just see like a sea of light as far as the eye can see. You can imagine how blinding it is for us. So they've known about it for a long time. And I would say zero incentive to do anything. I mean, the IUCN is touted as this, the elite, and kind of looking out for endangered species. And they basically said in emails, no, we're not overly concerned. Well, we'll wait and see. We've got a bunch of years. And I'm thinking a bunch of years. It's like DEFCON 1 here. So I mentioned, well, what about these indoor hatcheries like they have in the Caribbean? They've got these indoor hatcheries, right? And they're like temperature controlled. And that would bypass, since they're not going to enforce it anyway, that would bypass all of that. No, they would not go for it. Does that really surprise you guys?
That's I mean, it's insanity, because one of the things that really, now that you're mentioning, is that you have all these experts, right? We're not experts. We're just concerned, regular people. And that's what I kept telling the city when I approached them, and the Miami-Dade Sea Turtle Conservation Project when I approached them. And I said, listen, I'm just a regular nobody. Actually, I am just concerned because I care about my environment. I want my daughter to be able to come with her children here where she was raised, and come back and do what I used to do here with her when she was a little girl, for example. It's just, and they just don't, there's no programming. There's no, and Jennifer mentioned it earlier, there's no conversation between entities either. Because I understand we're talking about efforts. So efforts probably have to be a group of all these people that are involved, right?
Right.
The Florida Wildlife Conservation and the universities, so many non-for-profits and just regular people like us, like me, right? But there's nothing. And the more you try, I think that the worse. I felt completely not violated, but I felt like aggressively told to step back many times from all these places. I won't mention names or anything, but I did feel that all the time. Every time that I tried to intervene, ask questions, just regular questions, how can we as just regular residents do something about this? We don't want this to happen. And I have many people, not only me, but I mean, we're a pretty large group of concerned citizens in general, not only about sea turtles, but about so many things that are happening on the city, in our environment. And it seems like you bump head against everybody, and there's no communication, and there's no will to, at the very least, try to sit together and try to find some sort of solutions, or even volunteering. We offered ourselves to volunteer so many times.
I remember
we were
that.
told there's no night permit. There's no night permit. There's no night permit.
Right.
That's the answer.
Right. And they weren't looking to give you one either, which is part of the problem. Because that would have really helped to maybe not solve the problem, but certainly kind of help things along. I think we lost Sara for a moment. But that would definitely help things along, which is a shame, because originally the night program definitely helped educate the people. And whenever we went out and talked to people, they had like no idea of,
That's what I noticed when I got involved. We were
no
at the
idea
drum
at all,
circle.
right?
Is people they were there to party, they were there for the moon, they were there for this, that, and the other, and they didn't first of all, they couldn't see the nests on the beach.
Right.
And second of all, people were walking through them and not even realizing they walked through them. We weren't there trying to intervene or see a nest hatch. We were literally there during a full moon drum circle. You stand there, I'll stand by this nest.
Right.
Just please don't step through the nests. Please don't trample them.
Right.
It was not a concerted effort to try and, get involved in nesting. It was just please just be mindful that they're there and don't destroy them.
Would you say that the county program took a proactive or a non-active stance on trying to educate the public about light pollution or disturbing nesting llamas?
I feel like we have a lot more education is going on in the last few years. It's targeted to children.
Okay.
And I did notice that the signage that we got out is too complicated.
Yeah. Okay.
It just needs to be very plain and pictorial, and maybe in a few different languages. Just like, don't touch them.
Right. Right.
Don't touch them. Don't use it's not a playpen for your kid, and it's not a place for you to store your stuff where you go swimming in the ocean.
I have seen the playpen. I remember a few times, mostly like around the 4th of July, but I remember a few times. The first time I was just walking on the beach because it was the beginning of my nighttime rescue shift. And I see this little kid, like maybe 2 years old. And
you're digging in there.
Yes, yes. And obviously, I didn't even see like footsteps. So I think the mom, I don't know what she thought that caution tape was for, but it was like she picked up her kid and like put it inside, like it was like a playpen on the beach. And the kid was like literally right where the chamber was, because it was like right in the middle of, where the nest would have been on that mound of all things. I mean, I know they didn't know, but clearly there was a sign that said, don't touch, don't come in. And the kid had a little shovel and was just like digging away. And I had to like explain this whole thing. And I had no idea. And I said, well, there's a sign and like police caution tape, right? So that is kind of a clue that you're not really supposed to be doing that. But yeah, periodically I would see like the playpen thing kind of going on. But it is kind of amazing how few people really understand what's going on. Even people that live here. I was astounded by how many people will have condos or homes on the beach who don't actually spend that much time on the beach.
No, it's something to look at. It's something for visitors to go
do.
do.
I know. I was amazed. I mean, I would have thought the whole point of living on the beach is so you get up in the morning and you go for a run or you do yoga or something. And they're like, oh no, with the 2 weeks that we're here, we just open the window and we see the beach, and like completely oblivious. And I would say, well, have you ever seen like a mama nesting? And they're like, what would that be? And I'm like, well, the sea turtles, they've been here for like millions of years. They were completely unaware that these endangered species were nesting like just a couple 100 feet away from their window, which was kind of, kind of interesting. So you mentioned that the signage was too complicated. Are there like a lot of signs on the beach, like around the public access areas?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So that's part of a problem. That's part of a problem too. What do you think that is? I always wonder, like, why did they not even bother to put signs on the beach? It would just seem like such an easy, uncomplicated thing to do.
I got involved in Surfside, and the Daniel Deitch was our former mayor, and he helped me get in touch with the Army Corps of Engineers, which put in the budget that they had to put the signage was paid for in the beach renourishment program. So we have a lot of signage,
right? But
that wasn't consistently done. But the signage is a little convoluted because it's a scientist made it. It's not simple enough. It's too. No one's going to read all those words.
Right. And sometimes I've seen like brochures and flyers and things. Actually, Hillsborough Beach has a really good one. They literally go through the list, but they do it in like a very simple way. Like, don't touch the nest, pick up the trash, put away your chairs. If there's a light, on the patio or garage or home, can't shine on the beach. So that was pretty systematic. But I have seen things where it was very technical. And even though I worked with sea turtles and I understood all that lingo, I just knew
No
like
one's going to read it
no
all.
one's
No
going to
one's
read
going
it
to read it.
exactly. I would hand it to someone and they would be like, I don't know what this is. And I would say, just turn off the light. When it hits to be like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, just turn off the light. End of story, end of story. Or go to Home Depot for like $2, get like a little shield and put it on the side of the light that it, faces towards the beach. And that would be easy peasy. So that's always kind of part of a problem. What about
We
the
got
street
floor to
lights?
we have floor to ceiling windows here in the condos, and they have a reflective nature to a lot of the glass.
Oh, yes,
And
right,
the only thing that's regulated is the light outside, and
right,
it's not regulated. And the old lights are grandfathered in, and they're using white lights.
right.
And it's just some of these buildings are so bright that they light up the whole beach.
They are.
And then
They are.
I noticed that the new street lights are LED, and at least I guess they could change the colors for during different seasons, but the police want a certain color light because they want people to be able to identify other people, not just as people, but if there's a crime, they want to know what color people are wearing, what color people are. Everyone has a different set of needs, and the
Right.
police want it as light as possible. So I know here in Miami Beach during certain events, they're bringing in more light in places like Loomis Park because they
Oh.
want it lit up because of the crime.
Right. Oy, okay.
And then there's specific streetlights that are old and I don't know when they're going to be slated to be replaced, but they're spray painting lights instead of changing them out, and it's not really doing much of anything.
I did see a couple of buildings in Lauderdale by the Sea where it was a Pompano. It did seem like someone just took out black paint and painted the light, and I thought, boy, that is really not going to be good. And then there were a couple that they took what looked like, oh, I think Sarah's back. A couple where it looked like they had taken like black fabric and just kind of taped it on, but they didn't really secure it. So whenever there was a breeze, and of course, if you're on the beach, there's always a breeze, right? So the light would
At
be
least take
black.
some orange spray paint, and then there's like an orange light coming out, but
An orange light, exactly. Well, no, but see now, Jennifer, now that would be logical, and that would actually help the sea turtles.
it actually looks very nice. The orange and red light.
Yeah.
I see the landscaping that they're doing in some of the new buildings that have chosen to be proactive. It's
Right.
very modern. It's very sleek.
Right.
It looks elevated. There are buildings who have chosen to do this.
To do the right
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually like the look of I don't just like the look of the muted red for sea turtles. It's actually easier on my eyes as well. I don't like those bright floodlights. I mean, I understand, if you're walking in an abandoned building, right, and you're looking for something specific and you need detail, floodlights, fine, I get that. But if you're outside and you're on the beach, you're already able to adjust to kind of that nocturnal vision to some extent. And when you're looking at a floodlight, it can distort color, but it's like blinding to you. So
I noticed that with people on the city bikes. They bike
Right.
around on the bike path of the city bikes, and I'll be out there because I go across the street from my house just to sit or take a tiny little walk,
right.
and I'm blinded.
I know.
So the orange light it's calmer, it's more serene. It's not as intrusive.
It is. And also on the vehicles, not just the police vehicles, but like when the turtle vehicles, or sometimes some of the condos would have like their own like trash pickup or whatever. They would have these little ATVs on the beach, and they would have these bright white floodlights, which you can clearly see from, gosh, at least 2 miles away, because I knew where I was and I knew how far down the light was. And so I could see these bright white lights from 2 miles away. So of course, any hatchlings would come out, they would see those lights and they would crawl towards them. But I would also tell the officers, if the point is to try to find, crime on the beach, you're broadcasting that you're
That you're
there
there.
and
Yeah.
and how far you are. So if I'm doing something I'm not supposed to, I know exactly where you are. I know exactly how much time I have to, finish what I'm doing and then get the heck off the beach. I said, if you changed it to a red light, aside from the fact that it would be way better for the sea turtles, right? Which is supposedly they're in danger, they need protection. Most of the people on the beach would think, oh, you're just a turtle people, and they would not care, right? So you'd actually be able to sneak up on them.
I don't think they really want to sneak up on them. I think
Yeah.
that they just want them to disperse so they don't have to do that.
Oh, right. Not actually fight crime there. Well, that's a whole other that would be a whole other issue. But I always wondered like why there was such resistance to the red light, or even like a muted orange light, when it's actually easier for us to see. Because if you take like a bright floodlight and you put your hand over it, you don't have that bright beam, because the hand actually covers some of that and the light then disperses and you can actually see like a much bigger area. So if somebody was like 5, 10 feet away, you would be able to see them. And I would take people out and I would say, see that bright floodlight? Now put your hand there and you see how that changes. It actually makes it more safe for you. So I really didn't understand such resistance, because when I pointed out that the turtle friendly light is actually human friendly, people were like, oh, now I get it, right? And then they would say, so how come this isn't being done? And I'm like, well, that's why I'm here telling you, because it has to be done. And it's actually safer for everybody. And it doesn't even have to be that big of a production. That's the joke. You could just take the white light bulb and change it to a red light bulb during nesting season, or you could just put a shield on it and shield the light down and make it less bright. So it doesn't
But
have to be.
they don't do any surveys here till after season has started. There's no
Exactly.
prep.
Right.
So
Right.
it's all the construction lights that are right on the beach path. We've got so many new buildings coming up and everything is reactionary. It's not proactive.
Right. Right. And that's a shame too, because when I was doing the sea turtle program, both in Highland Beach, which actually is one of the darkest beaches in the state, we hardly had any disorientation because it was so dark and the law was enforced. But I would go down a lot of that by the state, and I would go down like January, February, right? So, and I would mark off like the big main offenders. So I had a couple of months before the season officially started, and even though it starts March 1st, I knew that most of the nesting wouldn't even like start till like April or May. So they had 3 or 4 months. And I would give them options. You can go to Home Depot, you could go to Lowe's, you can go to Ace Hardware, a bunch of places. And I would give them, pictures and, just take this picture. You need like a red bulb, easy peasy, or just some kind of a shield or whatever. And it could be temporary, it's just for nesting season. It was like so easy to do. But I noticed that when people wait until it's already the season, then it's too late, right? Because people are going to be like, oh, I don't have any time to do it.
Yeah, because then they're given warnings and
Right.
It's yeah.
But then they're giving warnings and maybe they're giving a fine, but then they don't really do anything, right? They kind of stall until the end of the season and they're like, okay, it's in the season. And then the whole process starts all over again. I found that very frustrating, right?
Yeah, I feel like they should be telling people months ahead of time, you need to take down those Christmas lights.
Christmas light. Are there a lot of people that leave up Christmas lights?
Yeah, because they put
On the
them on their
patio?
balconies and patios, and they do them at like bars and stuff.
There was a couple of bars that had like the little white lights. And of course, if you're a little turtle and you see the string of white lights, that looks exactly like stars, right? So of course, that's actually probably one of the worst things to have on there. Yeah, there was a bar actually that went out of business, but for years they did use a lot of those white lights strung up all around the side. And I used to tell them, that's like the worst thing you could possibly do. But if code doesn't enforce it and the police department doesn't enforce it, I know FWC doesn't do any kind of enforcement, which is a shame. So that doesn't leave us anywhere to go. So years
No.
ago, Yeah, years ago, you guys had come up to Pompano and we were all psyched to start a nighttime sea turtle hatchling rescue, which would basically mean people go out to the nests when they're about to hatch. And if the hatchlings don't go to the ocean on their own, which they rarely do in Florida, we would just pick them up and put them in the ocean. And it would have been such an easy program. It worked for years in Broward before the state came in and decided to, squash all of that. So do you think that there's any chance that the county program will ever start something like that on their
I don't
own?
think that they have the manpower or the budget,
Oh,
or they told me flat out that the FWC is not giving out those permits.
right. Do you think that the county program would have any incentive to like incorporate volunteers on their own, or is that just like a
I
done
know
deal?
I know that they have volunteers now. Of course, I've been in a car accident and I don't have the physical wherewithal to go
Right,
volunteer. So as soon as
right.
it became a thing, I was hurt and couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But I knew they were taking volunteers for morning surveys,
Okay.
but they don't have the permit for the nighttime. And they
Yeah.
would need to double their staff because they
Right.
can't have the same people get up in the morning and do
The night rescue.
the
I
night
did that.
rescue.
Yeah, I did both programs for 9 years, and then I just
So
did
you
the
just
rescue.
didn't sleep.
I did not. You got that right. I literally did not sleep. I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was on the beach by 6 o'clock. I mean, you had to because you can't be digging around nests at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. Is just ungodly hot. So that's just not a possibility. So I would get up at 5. I'd be on the beach up before 6 o'clock. I'd be there for 2, 3 hours digging up hatch nests and marking nests and false crawls. And then at that point, I mean, you're wide awake. You're just completely wide awake. So there was no getting around that. And then what would happen is I would go out to the beach at night and then I would do the rescue. And yeah, I basically would not sleep for all those hours. Pretty exhausting. And that's kind of sad. That's kind of sad to hear because ironically, Miami would have a lot of potential volunteers if they really wanted to do that. Uh, that they would have more than enough help to do both. Actually, they'd have plenty of people they could train to do the morning survey and a ton of people that would go out and watch the nest and rescue if they really wanted to save this endangered species, which I guess is not a priority.
Everything seems research based. But what are we researching it all for if no action is being taken?
Well, exactly. And of course, I did ask that of many people over the years. Well, I see you've done studies on lighting, right? And sometimes these studies would involve taking hatchlings from a nest and putting them, in a tank and in a laboratory, and then like shining lights on them. And I would think, and these are like sea turtle biologists, and some work for these big universities like FAU and uh, Nova and a bunch of other universities. And I would say, I don't know why you need to do this. You literally, all you have to do is go to the beach, any beach, any night after, certainly by 11 o'clock at night, and just stand there and look at all the lights, the indoor lights, the outdoor lights, the street lights, the sky glow. Anybody, even if somebody was like walking on the beach with their cell phone, you'd be surprised how much that could light
Well, the
up.
cell phones are big now.
They are. They are. They're much bigger and they're much brighter, and people are on them all the time. And then they also have like a bigger version, which I guess would be the iPad. And it doesn't even take a whole lot of light to disorientate a little sea turtle. And I would say you don't need to do these fancy studies. You literally just have to go out to the beach any night and just look and just take pictures or video, just like stream a video and just wait. And you'll see, just like a domino effect, boom, boom, boom. A nest will hatch, and maybe not all of the hatchings, but most of them will turn around and they will follow the sea of lights and not go anywhere near the water. And like Sarah had mentioned earlier, just crawl until they run out of steam and die. So that's a whole other kind of way of pretending you're doing something in the name of conservation when all you're doing is collecting a paycheck and you're not really saving the endangered species. And none of these studies really make the news. The the public isn't aware of them. They don't learn anything from them, right? So it's like, why are you even writing a study? Like, who would be reading this and who would be learning about this? Which is pretty much what is going on these days, which is unfortunate. When I first came here, there were not very many volunteer programs. And then it started not just with the rescue, but it started with a lot more volunteer programs and educating the public. And then over the years, one by one, they were just, the permits were removed and they were told that they weren't needed anymore. And, like you guys had said earlier, even today in 2023, people really have like no clue that there's sea turtles or that there's like a lighting issue or that there's anything that they could do to mitigate it. It's really frustrating.
I just don't understand why we don't have hatcheries. If it's so hot and they really want to save them, the money can be raised.
It could be. It really could be because FAU alone has something like $1 billion budget. And I know that NOVA has something like 900 million, or maybe I got it backwards, but between those two big universities, and they have a big sea turtle program, it's like $2 billion. I mean, that's a huge, huge budget. That's insane. And I can tell you from personal experience, in all the years I worked with sea turtles, I can't even count the number of people who said, and even if they didn't live locally, they would be more than happy to come to Florida and, of course, help the local economy.
They would love to come and help.
Tourism. Exactly.
It could totally become ecological tourism.
I know. Well, Jennifer, you should be in charge of this. It would be a boon to the economy, right? It would put Florida right on the map. It would really be so easy to do because basically you would just, not every nest, but enough of the nest. You would just excavate them, which those of us who do the morning survey are trained how to excavate nests and how to relocate nests anyway. So it's already part of our training. Believe me, anybody can learn how to do this. You take the eggs, you put them in one of those big buckets that they get at Lowe's for like $5. You cover them with sand. You put them in a room. You could put like a couple hundred of those buckets in a room and you just leave them there. And they hatch on their own. You don't have to do anything about them at all, right? You just leave them there with no air conditioning, and they would hatch on their own. When they hatch, you take the hatchlings down to the water and release them. You could charge tickets for that. You could make it an amazing event, and you could bypass all the lighting laws, which they obviously don't enforce. We all know that, and you would bypass the hot sand issue because they would be temperature controlled, right? So they would be a little cooler. So we'd have some males reproduce. If you don't have males, we're not going to save a species. I mean, females can't save a species on their own. And then you could do studies on how that is all working, right? And actually get real data.
Well, look what they did in Texas. That's what the whole Big Bend area, outside of the Big Bend area, they have sea turtles coming back there.
Right. The Kim's Ridley, which I think is like the most endangered of all species. And the Kim's Ridley, they only nest in just a couple of places in the world.
They're in the Keys and they're in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I know they're not doing so great there.
No. And then you think about our leatherbacks. And the leatherbacks, I mean, they're the giant sea turtles. They're as big as a car. And they used to nest all over the world. And most of the nesting historically had been over like in Indonesia and that area. And those beaches were like much of Florida, developed, just overdeveloped, and also just a huge amount of trash. So between the trash, oh my gosh. I mean, those pictures, right? You don't even know that it's water. All you see is just like cans and just solid stuff floating, and you don't even know that that's any water. There's just no way a turtle's going to be able to navigate that. And the beaches are covered, assuming there's still a beach left, covered with trash. And then, of course, you have all those condos with the lights. So that Atlantic species had pretty much died out. So we don't really have a whole lot of leatherbacks left either. They're not doing all that well. So they're
coming early and late. I noticed that the beach across the street from my house seems a couple months before sea turtle nesting season, a couple months after. That's the turtle that is showing up.
Wow. Okay. So, well, there might be a shift because it's really getting a lot warmer. It is. I mean, it's like, what is it, March 7th, and it's like 88 degrees down here, which is insane. When I moved down in '07, March was still relatively cool. It was in like the mid to high 70s. And the last few years, I've noticed it's like high 80s.
Zoiling.
Yeah, it's just crazy. And
The
so
water
that,
is warm.
yeah, the water's really warm. I mean, it's like a sauna. Forget a bathtub. It's like a sauna. So that's really crazy. So one last thing, what can anybody listening possibly do to kind of help save our sea turtles?
I feel like I like to walk when I'm out at the beach. I engage with children, and then the children engage with the parents. Um, just something simple as asking them to take their garbage with them at the end of the day and fill in the holes that they've dug in the beach. I think most people don't even know that there's going to be turtles coming.
Right.
So, just consciousness and starting a conversation. But I contacted a lot of the Girl Scout troops here, and they would
that's a
let
good
me
idea.
know when stuff was going on. Like they did plastic projects, and they contacted me when they found dead sea turtles because they like to play on the beach after school.
Right, right.
But the Girl Scouts are amazing. The Girl Scouts are absolutely an amazing organization.
They are amazing. I
So-
was a Girl Scout, and they do really good things. In fact, I worked with a Girl Scout a few years ago, and they were trying to get a ban on straws in Lauderdale by the Sea, and I think a couple of other places. So that's a good idea to kind of reach out and work with sea turtle, work with uh, the Girl Scouts. I wonder if there's Boy Scouts too, but the Girl Scouts.
Yeah, any scouts.
Yeah.
I just
Well-
wanted to be a Boy Scout. I wanted to go get dirty. I didn't want to stay inside.
Well,
Troop
they are.
leader that gave us homework. I was like, no. We're supposed to be getting in the dirt.
They are the future generation.
Yes.
I can only hope that the people that are on the permits at work with sea turtles throughout Florida and throughout the world finally get it together and realize that it is urgent. We really absolutely we cannot afford to wait. We really need to get the light pollution under control. And we need to stop destroying what little beach we have left because there's very little beach left.
There's no doubt that these people got into this and they love these animals. And I just
Right.
feel like they're trying to do this. They also have to live and their hands are tied.
Yeah.
But there's at some point, there has to be a line in the proverbial sand where you're saying, well, really need to make a shift and do something different. And
Do something.
I just don't think you can do anything without starting the hatcheries. Because we need dudes.
Yeah, we do.
We need dudes.
Yeah, we do. I was really shocked. When I first started working with sea turtles in 2008, I had no idea. And I don't know if they were studying it back then, but certainly by 2010, 2012, they definitely knew that the sand was hot enough to only produce females. And that is shocking. And then, of course, you have to figure, well, it can't just be the sea turtles because crabs nest on the beach, right? And then what about
You
all
don't
the,
see anything. They're raking
you don't
the
see
beach.
anything.
They're raking the beach so much that I just remember sitting on the beach as a little kid playing with coquina.
Right,
And you don't even see them anymore.
right.
It's crazy. I don't see the crabs. I don't see the coquina. Maybe I'm seeing like the sand fleas, but that's about it. And I noticed we don't have
I
the
do see sand
birds.
fleas. Yeah, not a lot of birds. I noticed that a long time ago.
Well, there's nothing for
because-
them to eat.
Yeah, there's right.
And there's
Well,
nowhere there for them to take care of their young. And I say something to people when I see people letting their children chase the birds. It's like the birds are here to take a rest. They're
right,
on a journey.
right.
And
Yeah,
it's
the
just
sh-
about
the
the way you approach people. You can't be. You have to be calm, and you have to appeal to their love of nature, which is why they're at the beach to begin with, and not
In the
at a
first
pool.
place, right? Exactly, exactly. Yeah, I've noticed that the shorebirds. I mean, I remember growing up and being in Nantucket, and boy, there were a lot of shorebirds. There were a lot of seagulls and terns and shorebirds, and I don't know all the species, but there were a lot, and they were always on the beach. And then I came down here, and I really didn't notice that many. And the last few years, I hardly noticed any. I don't just mean like shorebirds nesting on the beach. I hardly see any flying over the ocean. I hardly see any scurrying along, the washdown. There's just like nothing there. Same with the
There's
crabs.
nothing for them to
There's
eat.
nothing for them to eat. Well, that goes back to, we dump poop in the water and the red tide and all the plastic. And of course, that just, sucks up all the space, and it just completely contaminates the water. And so there's not a whole lot of not a lot of fish in the sea for them to eat. And then that just plays on it. Not a lot of crabs either. And then, of course, you think like the raccoons and the fox would come on the beach to try to feast on that, but there's no food for them either.
If they weren't raking the beach to an inch of its life,
that's terrible too. Yeah, that's terrible too.
Then there would be crustaceans, and some seaweed helps hold the beach together. So
right. But that goes back to the people that live on the beach, and they don't want to have.
I think it's about tourism
on the beach. Yeah, it is about tourism. Yeah, it is. They literally want to clean up the beach so it doesn't even look like a natural beach. Because if you were to go to like some pristine little beach out in the middle of nowhere, you would find high dunes, you'd find beach vegetation. Of course, the root system is what holds the sand. You don't need beach nourishment. And you would find seashells. That's another thing. That's another indication that the ocean is not so healthy. Years ago, right, you would walk on the beach and you'd see intact seashells because they were thicker and harder shell, and they were colorful.
Well, you're getting the beach renourishment, and the sand is going back out, and it's covering up all of that coral, and it's dead. And then we have a dead ocean.
Exactly. And the stuff that washes up is all bleached white, and it's like pieces of shells. So if anyone is out there and they collect seashells, they might be concerned that that's another indication that the sea is pretty contaminated, and I won't say it's dead yet. I want to hold out a little bit of hope, but we are fast killing it. We are definitely fast killing it. You can't possibly walk on the beach or go in the ocean and not realize that you're looking at what could be a dead zone in just a couple of years, especially if you're at a certain age. If you're over in your 40s and 50s and 60s, and you remember what it was like as a kid, and you remember that there was so much more life on the beach. It was a whole ecosystem, and it's just not there anymore. You hardly ever see dolphins out in the ocean. You hardly ever see sharks or whales, and I'm talking just 15, 20 years ago. You'd be walking on the beach.
There's a lot less males of the dolphins too. If you go to somewhere like Marco, they say that one male dolphin is the father to all of these.
Oh no, that's not good either. Yeah, so this isn't just affecting the hot sand and the pollution and all of that. This isn't just affecting sea turtles. Sea turtles are like an indicator because they nest on land, and so we can visibly see what's going on. But clearly, this is something that affects like all of the marine species, and therefore that is like a huge problem that hopefully we can get our together and fix it before we really kill the state and the planet, which would not be good. So I'm going to end it there. I thank you very much for talking. Hopefully we have enlightened some people. I hope that people have enjoyed listening to the show and maybe tune in next time. I cover many topics that you probably will not be reading in the news. I also encourage people to check out all of the other All About Animals podcasts, because they have some terrific shows that you'll find interesting. And I would say that is a wrap.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.